This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for joining us. Wow, what a momentous few days in the Middle East. President Trump's actions are already appearing to bring peace to the region. He just announced that he has brokered a ceasefire deal between Iran and Israel, and the 12-day war is coming to an end. We'll get into all of that in just a moment, but this comes just days after the US obliterated Iran's nuclear program, removing the most dangerous weapons in the world from the world's leading sponsors of terror. In what was an extraordinary operation, Operation Midnight Hammer saw the deployment of 125 aircraft, 7 B-2 stealth bombers, which flew for 37 hours, and 14 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs were dropped, destroying Iran's nuclear sites Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan. Now, critically, this operation did not target Iranian troops or Iranian people, and it came after Israel initiated extensive attacks on Iran's nuclear infrastructure and military, and Israel took out Iranian's air defense systems. So this was the time to strike. And this was the most consequential decision that Donald Trump has made as commander-in-chief. And you look back at what previous US presidents have said. Bill Clinton in 1995, George W. Bush in 2006, Barack Obama in 2015, Joe Biden in 2022, all clearly said that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. And Donald Trump in 2025, well, he followed through with this promise.
Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
The B-2 bombers have made it safely back in the United States after carrying out an operation that has made the world a much safer place, especially for Israel, America and Western democracies. Now, President Trump has declared the 12-day war between Israel and Iran has officially ended. The president posted congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful. On the assumption that everything works out as it should, which it will, I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world. Joining us now is Josh Hammer, Senior Editor-at-Large of Newsweek. Josh, great to see you. US President Donald Trump has announced that Iran and Israel have agreed to a ceasefire. This is what Vice President J.D. Vance had to say a little earlier.
When I left the White House, I thought that we might be able to get it across the finish line before this broadcast, and it looks like the president has been able to do that. I mean, look, he's been working the phones constantly. Frankly, before the 12-day war started, but certainly over the past 12 days, the president's been extremely clear about America's national objective here. It is to create a world where Iran cannot build a nuclear weapon.
Josh, this is incredible to get a result like this so quickly. Are you confident it's going to hold?
Well, first of all, before my confidence level, this is a remarkable achievement, regardless, by President Donald Trump. I mean, this is really incredible stuff. I mean, Gabrielle, for as long as I had been following politics, covering politics, talking, writing about politics, the sword of Damocles of the Iranian nuclear program has been one of the foremost foreign policy debates, literally, of our era, going back 25, 30 years. The Iranians have been building a nuke for a very long time now. So to go in like this and to eliminate their nuclear program without a single American casualty of a soldier, sailor, Marine, infantryman, diplomat, or anyone there is astounding. I mean, it is yet another example, as if we needed it, of Donald Trump just thinking, talking, and acting like no other president has before. I mean, the man just marches to his own tune, he beats to his own drum, and he gets results. Now, whether the ceasefire will actually hold there, look, let's recall that we are dealing with the most deceitful regime on the face of the earth. That is what the current Iranian Ayatollah malacracy is. Now, having said that, they have been wounded like never before. They've been wounded literally like never before since they took over in 1979 in the coup of the Shah. And Trump has shown that he is willing and able to reach deep into the bowels of their country. By the way, not just President Trump, but also Israel and the IDF, the Mossad, this incredible intelligence from the U.S. and Israel combined there, just going target by target, systematically eliminating high-ranking scientists, military commanders, the crown jewel of the nuke programs. So they know, that is, the Iranians know, that if they do anything whatsoever wrong, then this is going to be an utter disaster for them, an utter disaster. So that is why it actually might hold. But having said that, Gabriella, to use the old Ronald Reagan formulation there, this very much is a trust but verify, with an emphasis on verify, because you still are dealing with very deceitful people, assuming that this regime holds on for power for, another week, 2 weeks, month, which is itself very much an open question, I would say.
Well, as you say that Iran has been severely wounded, and there's a lot of speculation around how Iran was going to respond to the strike. And in the last 12 hours, we have seen Iran respond. Iran launched missiles against an American military base in Qatar, but the Trump administration had been given warning about this. So more than a dozen missiles were intercepted by Qatari air defences, and thankfully there were no casualties, no one was injured. And let's just take a look at how Donald Trump responded. He said it was very weak. He thanked the Iranian regime for giving the US notice of the attack, and he wrote, Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response, which we expected and have very effectively countered. What do you make of Iran's response, and what does it show you?
Well, it's a joke. I mean, it's an absolute joke. And by the way, the Iranian regime put out a propaganda statement after this, after none of their missiles actually landed, none of them had a single casualty that I'm aware of there. They put out a pretty hilarious, actually, propaganda statement after this, saying that they had pulverized the American military base, Al Udeid Air Base there. I mean, this is a transparent face-saving measure. That is literally the entire purpose of this exercise, is to try to demonstrate to their own people, the Iranian people who have been so deeply oppressed and subjugated for the 46 years of hell that this regime has been in power there. This is a dying, wounded animal that is essentially just lashing out to try to survive. And one of their ways of trying to survive is to demonstrate that they will still stand for their people, whatever that means. I mean, we're talking here about a kleptocratic theocracy that has pilfered trillions of dollars over the decades away from investing in their actual people into funding various terrorist proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen there. So none of it holds up there, but this was a very clearly an attempt at a face-saving measure. They probably coordinated it not just with the U.S., but also with Qatar. Qatar happens to be Iran's closest Sunni Arab ally. It's all kabuki theater, Gabriella. This is a pure symbolic stunt there. And it's a joke. And frankly, it's a joke, and it says nothing good about the Iranian regime. And frankly, Gabriella, also, I might add, total egg on the face of those primarily on the left, but even some voices on the right who have been overinflating the Iranian threat for years, if not decades now. A lot of people said that this would lead to World War III, that it would lead to mass American casualties. China and Russia, they said, they're going to jump in, and China and Russia, oh, how can we get into a nuclear war with China and Russia? Literally, none of this has happened. None of it. Correct. China and Russia did not lift a finger, here. So all of this ended according to what some of the more sober analysts predicted there. And frankly, the shrieks of hysteria from the World War III crowd, they owe a big explanation to their audiences, I would say.
Absolutely, absolutely. But there's plenty of conversation and speculation around regime change. Donald Trump has hinted at it. He posted on Truth Social, it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MIGA. Josh, what are your thoughts about this post? Is the president being serious? Is he hinting at a potential organic uprising? As we know, JD Vance and others in the administration have made it clear that that's not the goal here. That's not what the US is trying to achieve.
Well, Gabrielle, as you and I are speaking, there is a rumor that, and I should clarify, it is only a rumor, but there is a rapidly circulating rumor that I'm starting to hear suggesting that Donald Trump might have given Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israelis essentially carte blanche to take a shot at the Ayatollah prior to the ceasefire taking effect. We'll see. We'll see if that actually ends up being the case there. But I don't think that's what Trump is getting at in this Truth Social post. He's not getting at a forcible decapitation of the head of the snake, the Ayatollah, and the mullahs. I think he's talking here about a grassroots uprising to overthrow this horrific regime. Now, look, regime change, when it is imposed by Western elites and when it is done in nation-building fashion, a la Iraq, a la Afghanistan, we've seen how that works out. It does not work out typically good. It speaks, frankly, to the hubris and arrogance of Western elites there. But when it's done from the grassroots uprising level against a regime as horrific as this, and let's recall here, we're talking about Persia. Persia is an ancient civilization going back 2.5, 3 millennia. It's a very cultured, educated society there. The Persian people, prior to this horrific regime taking over, were some of the greatest people in the world, frankly, according to scientific advancements. The game of chess, if I'm not mistaken, was actually invented in Persia. I mean, the Persian people have actually done a lot for the world there. So again, it's always a fraught exercise, but if the Persian people take matters into their own hands, I would say that the odds are good that the successor regime would be at least less bad, ideally affirmatively better than what we're currently dealing with there. That's not to say that Trump would impose it via the United States here. This is not Team America, world police marching in to impose kind of the Western, Enlightenment liberal, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison constitutional order. That's not what's happening here. We're talking here about lending rhetorical and moral support to the Iranian people if they do decide to try to take matters into their own hands.
Okay, well, look, just in the last 12 to 24 hours, Israel has bombed the entrance gate of Iran's notorious Evin prison, which holds political prisoners and dual nationals. What kind of message does this send? What are the consequences or likely consequences of this in Iran?
Well, this is a notorious prison. This is exactly the prison that the Iranian regime held their political opponents. I mean, the women who are out there protesting in the streets, refusing to wear the hijab, people like that. Those are exactly the kind of people who are held in this prison. So look, whether it's this, whether it's Israel bombing the Iranian state media facility, the organ of the regime trying to reach the Iranian people there, I mean, Israel has clearly shown that they're not messing around there. But again, at least as of now, the mullahs by and large remain in power there. So they're stopping short of an attempt at a full-on regime change there. But they are, in this particular case, seeming to aid and abet the jailbreak of many people who've been wrongfully detained by one of the most despicable regimes on the face of the earth there. And I interpret that, Gabrielle, as one of many ways to try to lend soft support to the Iranian people there, because the people, frankly, that are going to be escaping from this prison now that it has been bombed by the Israelis, the people that are escaping there are exactly the kind of people that, using things like Elon Musk's Starlink, and they'll start communicating there. Maybe they can get arms from a source too. These are exactly the kind of people that you would like to think, indeed you would perhaps even like to pray, that might be willing to ultimately put their lives on the line to try to decapitate this most evil of regimes.
Looking at Iran's options, there has been reported the threat of sleeper cells. Border Protection reports that the threat of sleeper cells in the US has never been higher. Tom Homan spoke about this.
Well, look, you and I have talked about this many times. I said the last 4 years, my biggest concern was this open border was the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen. So I pulled numbers this morning just from a CBP under Joe Biden. There was 1,272 nationals of Iran released in the country between OFO and the Border Patrol. And you compare that to the Trump administration, zero. Right, zero releases. And right now, because of President Trump's leadership, we have the most secure border in my lifetime, most secure border in the history of this nation. So we have a secure border. That was President Trump's big win on securing this nation. So we're not releasing people in this country. Special interest aliens aren't crossing that border undetected. But under Joe Biden, we had over 10 million people cross that border. But my biggest concern from day one, beyond the fentanyl, beyond the sex trafficking of women and children, were the 2 million known gotaways. Over 2 million people crossed that border. We don't know who they are, where they came from.
Josh, how concerned are you about this?
Well, Tom Homan's exactly right. I mean, literally every word that he just said strikes me as emphatically correct. Gabrielle, we can actually go back quite a bit further. So after 9/11 happened in the early 2000s here in the United States, there was a thing called the 9/11 Commission, which is exactly what it sounds like. They had a lot of senators, diplomats, high-ranking officials formulate an extensive conclusion, a summary as to what happened and why it happened. And one of the most famous conclusions of the 9/11 Commission, which came out in 04, 05, around then, was they said that it is axiomatic, it is self-evident that terrorists cannot commit harm within the United States if they don't come into the United States in the first instance. 9/11, in fact, most of the hijackers who flew those planes into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and so forth they were actually here on expired visas. So, illegal immigration, a part of it are these gotaways that Tom Homan's talking about. A lot of it, though, are just expired visas. But all of the above contributes to a national security environment where we have no idea who is currently in the country there. We have no idea who is currently here. And Iran and Hezbollah and their various proxies have had sleeper cells going on for decades now. This is not a particularly new thing. Rather, the difference is that we just have less of an idea as to how many of them are here in the United States and where they are. It's not good. It's a very legitimate concern there. It's something that I've been thinking about for a very long time there. Having said that, Gabriella, the possible threat of that is not something certainly that can dissuade you or disincentivize you from taking affirmative action overseas that is manifestly in the national interest. So I've seen some people on social media saying that, the threat of sleeper cells is so great that the United States should never have done this to Fordo and Natanz, the Iranian nuclear facilities. I profoundly disagree with that. You have to do what is best in the national interest there and then trust that law enforcement, the FBI, CIA, and so forth will take care of what's happening here on the home front there. But nonetheless, it is very much a real concern, no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some Democrats are furious that Donald Trump took out Iran's nuclear threat. AOC and others have called for Donald Trump to be impeached for launching the strike on Iran without congressional approval, which is just so embarrassing for them. But also, while many have been celebrating and thanking Donald Trump for having the courage to do this, others have been taken to the streets in cities around the world protesting Free Palestine and denouncing the bombing of Iran's nuclear sites. Are you surprised? What's your reaction to this kind of response?
Gabrielle, I think that probably a majority of Democrats are actually genuinely hoping for a nuclear-armed Iran. I genuinely believe to this day that Barack Obama and his entire administration actually wanted Iran to be nuclear. And I'll tell you exactly why they think this. It's straight out of the left-wing academy. I mean, it is pseudo-academic claptrap, the likes of which I could barely even attempt to think of on my own. But the going theory is essentially this. They think that in the Middle East, Israel and the non-Islamist Arab states, namely Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and so forth there, the logic is that those states, Egypt, Jordan, are just too powerful. And because they're too powerful, that is why you have these other countries like Iran, Turkey, Assad in Syria back when he was there. The logic is that is why they're launching it. That's why they're latching out. So if you take that to its next step, then it would follow that you actually want Iran to get a nuclear weapon to check the nuclear power of the Israeli, Saudi, Emirati axis there. And therefore, these people say that they'll kind of just balance each other out and there'll be grand peace in the region. I mean, it's absurd. It's risible. It's frankly kindergartner logic. It's the kind of thing that you would expect, a drunk 19-year-old university freshman who is high on his supply from some toxic combination of various narcotics to kind of come up with at 3 a.m. in the college dorm room. I mean, it's just low IQ, midwit stuff, for lack of a better explanation there. But I think they actually genuinely believe it. So that probably above all is why people like AOC are lashing out. This is obviously not an impeachable offense. It is nonsense. The commander-in-chief under Article 2 of the Constitution absolutely unequivocally has the inherent constitutional authority to launch in prophylactic defensive strikes like this to protect the American people against an imminent threat. There's no doubt about that in constitutional law here in the U.S. whatsoever there. But they're coming from a starting place where they genuinely actually do want Iran to get a nuclear weapon, which really says, frankly, a heck of a lot about their moral priorities, I would say.
Josh Hammer, Senior Editor at Large of Newsweek, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us on Power Hour. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
Joining us now is Ali Savavi, Foreign Affairs Committee official at the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Thank you so much for joining us. There's plenty of speculation about regime change. How would you describe the situation in Iran right now, and how likely is it that regime change could occur?
Well, I think the prospects of regime change in Iran has always been real, and it's not just because of the conflict that we have been witnessing, I guess, in the past 11 days. For 44 years, the Iranian people and, of course, the organized resistance have been fighting to bring down this regime because it poses not only a threat to the Iranian people, but also to regional and international peace and security. Obviously, in view of what has happened, the Iranian regime has never been so weak and vulnerable, not least because of the tremendous economic crisis that the regime is suffering from, but also, of course, now we see that its military and security apparatus has been heavily damaged. It has lost many of its top commanders, and of course, that will only enhance the chances of the Iranian people and the organized resistance to complete the job that they have been working on for so many years, to finally end this regime and bring peace and democracy to Iran.
How are Israel's recent operations against Iran, even the last 24 hours, bombing Tehran's Evin prison, affecting the internal stability of the regime?
Well, the regime, of course, is quite unstable, not least because I think the Iranian people are very much opposed to this regime. As you know, in 2022, tens of thousands of Iranians came out to the streets of Iran, and they chanted death to the dictator, whether the Shah or the leader, meaning Khamenei. So the Iranian people have no illusion about this regime, and they are fighting it tooth and nail. But obviously, with the weakening of the Iranian regime's military and security forces, naturally that will empower and embolden the Iranian people to take their fight against this regime to the next level and ultimately bring it down. Although I must emphasize that when we talk about regime change, we're not talking about regime change through foreign intervention and foreign wars, but bottom up, which means through the efforts of the Iranian people and the organized resistance, the NCRI and the MEK, who have been waging a war against this regime since 44 years ago.
Iran's a country that's experienced democratic uprisings 5 times since 2017. So, as you say, now seems like a real possibility. I suppose there are concerns about what that would actually look like, potentially a lot of instability and chaos rather than, of course, a peaceful transition. But what are the signs that you're seeing that indicate the Iranian people are ready to rise up?
Well, I think one very clear indication is that despite what has happened and despite the narrative that was being pushed by some armchair experts and, of course, the Iranian lobby in Western capitals, that the Iranian people didn't rally around the flag, because from the perspective of the Iranian people, the only enemy they have is the regime in Tehran. In fact, during the 22 uprising, nationwide uprising, one of the most prevalent chants by the Iranian people was, the enemy is right here, they lie when they say it's America. And so in that context, really, we're not looking at a chaotic situation moving forward. Actually, after the ceasefire was announced earlier today, the NCRI president-elect Maryam Rajavi basically said, welcome the ceasefire and end to the foreign war. And she basically said that the proposal for a ceasefire, and I'm reading from her statement that was just released, the proposal for a ceasefire and ending the war is a step forward for the third option, neither war nor appeasement. Let the people of Iran themselves, in the battle of destiny, bring down Khamenei and the dictatorship of the Velayat Faqih. She also said that the people of Iran, in their century-long struggle, at tremendous and bloody cost, have repeatedly rejected dictatorships of both Shah and Sheikh, meaning the mullahs, through successive uprisings. So in this sense, really, I think the Iranian people have made their determination clear that they don't want any part of this regime. And I think in the weeks and months forward, this opposition to the regime will escalate and will lead to an organized uprising that will topple the mullahs of Iran. Remember that nobody believed that Assad regime would fall in a matter of 11 days. Many thought it would be a permanent feature of the Middle East, but of course things have changed. The same holds true for the regime in Tehran.
Ali Savavi, Foreign Affairs Committee official at the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Really appreciate you making the time to speak with us. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
It's time for Media Meltdowns. Well, the US has destroyed Iran's nuclear facility, and the president has been clear for a very long time that Iran cannot hold a nuclear weapon. But according to MSNBC, when Iran chants death to America, oh, well, they don't really mean it.
Why is it a foundational issue for Trump that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon? Why is this something that the U.S. should be involved in? Why are we allied with Israel?
He says because they chant death to America.
They chant death to America. I went to Iran in 2014. I was sitting at a rally. These young guys were chanting death to America. I had a minder. I said, what are they saying? They're saying death to America. They finished the chant, and two young men came over and said, are you American? I said, yes. We want to welcome you to our country. We love American culture and love American movies. They wanted to talk about all these things. Iran is the most Western nation in the whole Middle East.
And Margaret Brennan, host of CBS News' Face the Nation, had to be reminded by Marco Rubio of why Iran could not hold nuclear weapons, and the fact that the regime had everything they needed to was enough to justify the strike.
Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I think that question being asked on the media, that's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have
that is
everything
the
they need
key
to build a
point
weapon.
in U.S. intelligence assessments. You know that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's
that
not.
The political decision had not
I know
been
that better
made.
than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons.
Marco Rubio reminding CBS of what is relevant. But the New York Times, well, they might deserve some credit here. Let me know what you think. New York Times has been covering the most critical parts of America's historic strike on Iran's nuclear sites, reporting on Pete Hegseth's briefing. The New York Times journalist wrote, in the briefing, Hegseth referred to B-2 pilots as our boys on those bombers, yet both men and women have been trained to fly them. Well done, New York Times. Excellent point that both men and women can fly planes. But it was LA Sheriff's Department's post that really takes the cake. The LA Sheriff's Department posted condolences to families in Iran who were, quote, impacted by Iran's nuclear sites getting blown up. In a shared post, they say, our hearts go out to the victims and the families impacted by the recent bombing in Iran, the bombing that did not hurt anyone. This post has now been edited and deleting the condolences. And then there's the hosts of The View. Joy Behar seriously questioned why Donald Trump didn't tell the Iranians he was going to bomb their nuclear sites.
Did he keep it a secret for the surprise? The surprise version?
I mean, absolutely the diversion. And you saw the way that all indications were that B-2s were flying towards Guam. Everybody thought, okay, so we're getting in position to be ready. They wanted to have some element of surprise. Let's face it, there wasn't really much element of surprise. I mean, this had been in the works for a long time, but to have the final moment to be a surprise.
Joining us now is Hilary Fordwich, president and founder of Strollmark. Hilary, great to see you. What an extraordinary few days in the Middle East. President Trump waited and then acted with courage, taking out Iran's nuclear facilities. But what do you make of the mainstream media's coverage? I mean, you have the New York Times making their coverage about political correctness, and the hosts of The View seem to have no idea why the element of surprise was just so crucial in this operation.
Well, absolutely. And Gabriella, I will say this is Trump speed. And when you saw like Jasmine Crockett, when you saw these people like on The View, as you mentioned, what did they want? They wanted a debate about a surprise. Yeah, that's a really smart thing to do. And actually, something that I find very disappointing is How much more anti-American can you be than not be behind our men and women of the special forces that flew over there in harm's way, went on this secret mission? How can you not be behind them and not congratulate them for a successful mission, coming back and getting back to US soil safely? What I find is absolutely amazing, if you think about it, Gabriella, is that Winston Churchill said that, the truth has to be escorted by a convoy of lies. President Trump didn't even lie. Remember, he said he would decide within 2 weeks. Correct. He didn't say he wasn't going to decide. So I thought it was brilliantly done. Brilliant deception and brilliant element of surprise. I just wish they'd be more American and get behind our troops.
Very well said. Well, you mentioned Jasmine Crockett. She says that Donald Trump is more dangerous to America than the illegals who are in the United States. And she's gone on this rant, furious that Donald Trump didn't consult with her before bombing Iran's nuclear sites.
So I know they may claim we law and order, blah, blah, blah. So go get the undocumented people and let's try to ship them out. Let me tell you something. They are not the people that are putting us in harm's way. It is him and his administration that is putting us in harm's way. I am telling you right now that I legitimately have had no intel whatsoever. Zero intel as a sitting member of Congress, regardless of how you feel about me, regardless of my party affiliation. No one has consulted specifically with me or anybody in my office to give us any information.
I mean, Donald Trump has just made the world a much safer place for Western democracies. No thank you from Jasmine Crockett there. But what do you make of the Democrats' response? I mean, they are just proving to be more and more irrelevant.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when she said about the, not being safe by President Trump, I think she ought to be talk to the person that was, I think it was a woman who was actually set on fire by an illegal in the subway. That woman wasn't very safe. And all those that have suffered the crimes, those that have actually, perished. President Trump, when he had the joint session, he actually named many of those, like Laken Riley is a good example. She's dead now because of an illegal. So I think she should talk to Jasmine Crockett, should talk to some of those families and see how safe they feel. Yes, I think we're on the precipice of world peace.
Let's talk about Russia's response. We know that Russia's President Vladimir Putin slammed the attacks in Iran, saying they were unprovoked and unjustified in a meeting with Tehran's foreign minister, but didn't announce any really concrete support for his key ally in the Middle East. So we know that Moscow's a big backer of Iran, but he's not actually swung forcefully behind Russia's partner. What's your assessment of Russia's response and what can we expect from here?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's Russia's response. And I think the other thing to look at, it's both Russia, obviously, as you say, Putin did make those that statement, but look at the whole of the Middle East. Isn't it very interesting that none of the Arab countries whatsoever came to Iran's support at all? I think that actually says a lot. And generally, I actually look back at President Trump's trip to the Middle East and look, I bet you he was talking to all the countries he visited then, including Saudi Arabia, but not limited to Saudi Arabia, and talking to the Remember at the time, a very interesting, Gabriella, remember he didn't go to Israel. People said, why didn't he go to our major ally in the Middle East? I think it's because he was garnering all of their support so that, not about the this particular attack, but I think that at that time, he was making sure that we were well allied with the rest of the Middle East. And Putin, all it was a statement, and he was just barking like a little dog.
Yeah, excellent point. Now, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has called on China to prevent Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important shipping routes. So any disruption to the supply of oil would, of course, have profound consequences for the economy. But China, in particular, is the world's largest buyer of Iranian oil and has a close relationship with Tehran. And we know any attempt to disrupt operations in the Strait could send global oil prices skyrocketing. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, I would say, yes, you're totally correct there. China actually has about 54% of the output that comes through the Strait of Hormuz. So you're right. China is far more vulnerable. I do think it's very interesting, actually, that right now Brent crude is just at $69 a barrel, and we have not seen any massive spikes. Actually, after the Israel-Iran ceasefire was announced this evening, all oil prices have remained steady. So I think after this evening, I think you're going to see some stability in the next few days. And I don't think going to see what a lot of the negative press, and we started out talking about the mainstream media, the mainstream predicted this terrible skyrocketing of oil prices. Hasn't happened. And now with this ceasefire, Gabriella, I don't think it will.
Let's turn to what is happening inside the United States. Kamala Harris, she's reportedly considering running for governor of California. Sources told The Hill that she's considering all her options, but she's not done with public service and is giving the race strong consideration. Now, of course, the decision by Kamala Harris to run for governor would be significant because that would mean she's not going to run for president in 2028. What do you make of this?
Well, first of all, don't forget, she actually had zero votes in the primary. She was the one that dropped out first. And then all of a sudden, when she became vice president, then obviously the Democratic Party undemocratically took out Joe Biden, and then she lost the election. So her track record isn't very good. She hasn't had public support. And the other thing, Gabrielle, I think is really interesting is, did you know that she's taking July off? From what?
I did not know.
Went to Hawaii to take off time. She's always taking time off. From what? You can't take time off when you're not doing anything. I just don't think she's got a track record in terms of voting, and she's not doing anything, nor has she really achieved anything. What record is she ever going to run on? Look at the state of California. Californians have voted that state. They go to Texas, they go to Florida. It's a failing state. I don't think she has a record to run on, and nor the support.
Hilary Fordwich, president and founder of Strellmark, thank you so much for speaking with us. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Gabriella.
Joining us now is royal commentator and host of the To Die For daily podcast, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, great to see you. So celebrities are weighing in on Donald Trump's decision to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, and surprise, surprise, some are upset that Donald Trump removed the most dangerous weapons in the world from the world's leading sponsors of terrorism. Singer Ariana Grande has shared AOC's post calling for Donald Trump to be impeached, and she shared AOC's message to her 370 million followers on Instagram. But now the singer is being slammed for this. Many on social media are saying, stick to singing. What else are we hearing?
I mean, I hate to be in that same camp, but please, Ariana Grande, stick to singing. If we can't trust you with our boyfriends, her current boyfriend, she stole from his wife, I certainly don't trust her with my president. And I really this just fires me up because I want to enjoy this person's singing career. I want to enjoy her movies. But when she inserts herself in things that she has no business talking about or having an opinion on, it ruins the entire experience for me as, somebody that wants to watch her and enjoy her as her audience.
And she kept going, criticising Donald Trump, also criticising Trump's ICE raids. She shared this post, which reads, "Could someone explain which crimes get you deported and which ones get you elected president? It's so confusing." Once again, this isn't going down too well with her audience.
No, I mean, people are saying, how can we deport Ariana Grande? They're saying, what do you contribute? And challenging her as to why she feels like she's an expert in this arena. And, sometimes some of my favorite celebrities, I have no idea who they voted for. I have no idea what religion they are. I just consider them incredibly talented people. And Ariana Grande, who is without a doubt incredibly talented, is alienating a lot of people with her social media activity and also retweeting AOC. Oh, come on. There's got to be any other better bigot you can retweet, Ariana.
Well said. Hailey Bieber has fueled rumours that her and her husband Justin Bieber are on the rocks, potentially heading for a divorce. She was spotted out and about in New York City without her wedding ring. Now, these photos have been obtained by Page Six, and this, of course, comes at a time where there's plenty of concern for Justin Bieber's well-being. And why would Hailey do this? It seems like a public message to send. What are your thoughts on this, Kinsey?
Okay, so it's not just this, but sources close to Bieber have actually talked to Entertainment Tonight, claiming that Justin is irritated, accusing Hailey of caring more about how their relationship looks to the general public more than how it feels privately between the two of them. On the flip side, Haley is said to be frustrated with Justin's lack of drive and motivation, which, girlfriend, I can totally relate to. Every time he's posting on Instagram, he's got a bong in his hand. So yes, like, what else are you doing, Justin? But fueling the rumors, of course, is her without her wedding ring, Justin's social media behavior becoming so erratic. And insiders say both want to make it work. One source put it bluntly, things are not good.
Yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it? Venice is preparing for billionaire Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's wedding of the century, they're calling it, and many of the city's iconic venues are going to be part of the ceremony, which is expected to attract hundreds of celebrities. But local residents aren't all that happy with this, and there are disruptions to the city already. They've begun with this No Space for Bezos's campaign. What's happening here?
Oh my God. Well, I mean, the second I saw the foam party pictures on the yacht today, I completely understood all of the protests. Lauren Sanchez, put your dirty pillows away, okay? But yeah, the series of lavish celebrations are set to unfold this week in honor of the upcoming nuptials. According to a source in Italy, Bezos and Sanchez will officially say I do June 27th. They've planned a 3-day affair. The guest list includes allegedly Oprah Winfrey, Leonardo DiCaprio, Kim Kardashian, Barbara Streisand. So a big guest list, but they have reportedly had to change one of the venues due to disruption over locals being angry about them being there.
Let's turn to royal news now. Prince Harry is reportedly going to offer an invite to the royal family for the 2027 Invictus Games, which could see a long-awaited reunion for the Duke of Sussex and his family. It's been reported that Prince Harry is keen to reconcile with King Charles and other royal relatives for the 7th instalment of the Invictus Games. According to the Daily Mail, an emailed invitation will be sent out in late June, and this will be followed by a formal invitation. How do you think this is going to be received? Do you see this playing out the way Harry potentially wants it to?
Well, my understanding is that palace sources feel the same way that I have felt over the last 20 hours since this 24 hours since this story broke, which is, gestures are leaked to the press before they're actually made. So how is this, a genuine reconciliation attempt and not a PR strategy? I think the king might actually show up because I think he's got a soft spot for Prince Harry. Hopefully, the king is sick. I hope that he does show up for Prince Harry, but I don't believe we'll see Prince William there.
Now let's talk about the Diddy trial. Sean Diddy Combs won't be testifying at his bombshell Manhattan trial, revealing the disgraced mogul's legal team is not planning on calling a single witness in his defence. That's pretty significant. What more can you tell us?
Well, this could just be a legal strategy. He could, if he's found guilty, he could then go to the judge, appeal, and say, can you believe they called no one in my defense? I think that my team wasn't strong enough. I don't think that they adequately represented me. And he could get him, the judge could legitimately appeal the verdict based on Diddy saying that he didn't feel like they fought hard enough for him. So I'm wondering if this is just some sort of sneaky strategy, or if they want the jury to sit back and go, wow, he really doesn't buy into it. I mean, he was dancing while they were playing some of the freak off videos to the music in the videos. Maybe that they're just trying to play the we're not buying any of this card, but realistically, he could appeal this saying he didn't feel like he had adequate representation.
Okay. Finally, a BBC newsreader is being applauded for going off script and correcting what had been put in her teleprompter. Watch this.
London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has released research which says that nearly 600 heat-related deaths are expected in the UK. Malcolm Mystery, who is involved in the research, says that the aged, pregnant people, women, and those with pre-existing health conditions need to take precautions.
Brilliant. Kinsey, what do you make of this?
I think that there is a producer that got the scolding of a lifetime from that anchor. And I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to witness it. You saw it in her eyeballs that she said, who did this to me? And I love that. I love her. I wish I could give her a hug.
Yeah, absolutely. Royal commentator and host of the To Die For Daily podcast, Kinsey Schofield, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Thank you.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.